Welcome back to Realm of Unpopular Opinions. I feel like I am dying of heat stroke. It is not even that warm. It's not even that warm. I think the highest we went so far has been like 33 degrees. I feel like I am dying. There's two fans pointed at me. The light is all I can bear, so let's just get into the video. Funnily enough, I posted more videos when I was at my busiest, and then for the last month, as I was recuperating and recovering from the two busiest months I've had in years, I didn't do anything. I did not do anything. So let's just get started. We're going to be talking about, in my opinion, the hardest books that I've ever read. Now, this is useful so I can tell you whether I think it was worth slogging through them. Now, difficult can mean many things for many people, but what I have decided that it means for this video is either difficult writing style, difficult words for someone who isn't, or perhaps even for native English speakers. It's the length, the form of storytelling, the amount of names and terms you have to remember, basically different things that you'd consider difficult when reading a book. Now, it's a fact that different books are different difficulties for different people. So several of these novels, I'd say I flew through while being able to acknowledge that they are difficult books. So I think I will try to give reasons for why I think this could be difficult for some people, even though a lot of them weren't difficult for me. And then in the end, I'm going to give negative examples of books that I either couldn't completely finish or tried and couldn't read, or read and hated, and it felt like a trial to get through for me personally. So you can get a bit of a feel for what I think are difficult books. Without rambling on, let's just get into it. Let's just work through the books in order. I have a stack here. The first book, and I've read a lot of classics in my life, but I will use this one specifically, is The Epic of Gilgamesh. I don't know which side is better, so it doesn't catch the light, but The Epic of Gilgamesh, basically. I'd say that this was difficult specifically because of how old it is, and it doesn't read even like a myth or a legend. It reads like exactly what it is, which is like fragmented excerpts from a tablet. Not all the lines are translated, so some of them are cut off, some of them repeat themselves. I remember in high school when we had to just read excerpts of this, everyone struggled so much. Now, would I struggle with this? I read this entire thing, by the way, not all of it, all the extra stuff in context I didn't read. I don't really care about that, but the 12 or 13 tablets I read in their entirety. Would I have read all the tablets in their entirety if I was not in my Fate series phase is very questionable. Because at that time I was reading everything to do with those characters, so obviously I was like, I need to read the Epic of Gilgamesh so I can get all the Gilgamesh and Enkidu lore and Babylonian gods and everything for Babylonia, the series. It adds to the series, by the way, if you read this, because all the little references are so cool when you can catch them. But if I did not have that motivation, I don't think I would ever have read this, because base level, if you just jump into it, I think it's really dull and very jarring to read because it doesn't flow like poetry. It doesn't read like a story. It's a very dry mythological epic poem. I think it's an epic poem. Or if not even a poem, it's literally just clay tablet. This is the oldest writing that we have in the world, and you can tell when you're reading it. So maybe look into translations. This was translated by Andrew George. I don't know if that's a good translation or not. I have no idea, obviously, but I did read this in high school, and I remember that we were all just moaning so much when we had to do that because it was so dry and so dull. But I have to say that I actually kind of enjoyed it, but I had the motivation of wanting to catch all the references in Fate, so I was looking out for specific things, but I found it interesting, and I would say it's worth a read if you have a very specific reason for why you want to read it. I think if you just want to pick it up to be well read and to read all the classics, I don't really think you need to. I don't really think you need to. I know there are people who want to read the entire literary canon, but since that is never going to happen anyway, I'd say skip it if you think it's dry and boring, because it probably is, without a specific motivation for reading it. Next one is a bit more of a sin, and that is this small, like cloth-bound classic, which is My Friend Maigret by Georges Simenon. Please never correct me when I'm speaking French. I don't like pronouncing French, but that's the one language that I cannot pronounce at all. But I hated this, and I wanted to like it because I really liked the show, and it's a crime, so I thought I'd enjoy it. The sin of this book, like the unforgivable sin of this book, is that this is book, I think, like 49 of the series, and it doesn't ease you into it at all. Like, this starts mid-case. I had no idea what was going on, what the case was, who these people were, what prior relationships they had. So whoever put book 49 in a series into these like small cloth-bound classics, which are supposed to be like taste testers for authors, shame on you, and never pick out books again, because I'm supposed to get this and see if I like the author. That's what all the little black classics, modern classics, cloth-bound classics are and should be. Either standalone stories that you can understand without any other context, or at least the first story if you're going to introduce me to an author. This was awful to get into. I hated every second of it. I hated it. Not only was it boring and incomprehensible, but I didn't feel attached to any characters. I didn't know what their relationships were. Like, this was just a misery to read. And if you have never read Maigret story before, skip it. Give it a wide berth, because I hated this. This was just an abomination, and I haven't experienced anything like this with any of the other small classics that I have, because all of them are either standalones, short stories, or introductions to authors. This was jail. The next one, and it's a very famous one, is Dune. I'm not going to hold this up for long, so I'll just get into it. This is infamously a very difficult book to get into. I've heard it from older people, from people my age, from people online, from people offline, that this is super difficult to get into, both in terms of the writing style, world building, terminology, because he crosses all kinds of different languages when he's coming up with this stuff. He puts in science, obviously, because this is science fiction, and he was, I think, an ecologist, in the world building and in the references. And there's also like chemistry, and there's all kinds of slang and names and so many houses, and this is just not accessible language-wise. I think that's like the main thing that bothers people and puts people off. That's the thing that I was like warned against, that it's super verbiage heavy. However, like a bit of a side note, I did not have a single problem with this. Like, I was so intimidated to read it and then flew through it. I remember I read that first Dune book in like a day or two, maybe 3, because I could not put it down. Like, plot wise, it just keeps moving, and I was not bored for a single second, and I loved it. But I am still able to acknowledge that the language doesn't flow as much as it should. There's certainly like sometimes side tangents or stuff that he talks about that you really don't know what that is. But I also can't really relate because I devoured them. Like, both times that I read the Dune books, I read them very quickly, and every time I read them, I'm a little bit shocked that it's so famous for being like dry and dense and difficult to get through, because I never found it difficult to get through. So you will see that with some of these books. Like, I acknowledge that they're well known for being difficult, but I personally never found them difficult. So it's a bit difficult. It's a bit difficult for me to see them as such. Closest example, my dad read these. The language like killed him. Like, he hated it. He couldn't get through it like at all. So there you go. But I flew through them both times that I read them. The next one is even more famous for being difficult to get through, and you will see why when I pick it up. The Wheel of Time, but there's a reason why I picked this book. If you've read it, you know why I picked this book, to illustrate my point. In the beginning, it's a normal run-of-the-mill fantasy story. Not too many point of view changes, not too difficult to digest the world building and the rules and all of that. But when you get to this point, you will question things. You will question how you ever thought this was an easy thing to read. Like, I picked up this book because it's famously a slog, even for me, who had a special way of reading it, who had an expert in the house, who had WOT encyclopedia on all my devices. This book this book was just a trial to get through, because deeper into the series, when he gets very rambly, when he gets very ranty, and the chapters are longer, if you come across a chapter of like character 773 doing something you do not care about in a way that you do not care about for 30 to 50 pages, you will have yourself wondering why the hell you ever started to read this book. At least I did. I think everyone did at some point throughout the Wheel of Time. I certainly did in book 10. Like, the low point of me reading this series was, I think, when the chapter I was trying to skip was so boring that I started reading the summary on Vault Encyclopedia, and I couldn't even read the summary. I was bored to tears even with the summary. So that's the worst of the slog. But because of the way that I read it, which like fragments the second half of the story into separate storylines, which makes each of them easier to understand and connect later on. Like, my dad did like the list, but that's how I read it the first time, where all the storylines are divided into like all of Perrin's story, all of Rand's story, and then they all like come together in the end. It made it far clearer in my head, rather than if I just picked up the book and read all of the many points of view at once. This way that I read it, I was able to connect the stories way better and to have a thread and feel for a certain character's progression and storyline far better. So I didn't feel the slog as heavily, but when you get to this book, I think all the perspectives in this book, except for maybe Rand, and he has like 2 chapters here, you can feel that it drags, like it's long, it's wordy, it's so dull at certain parts that you cannot even read summaries of the chapters. So difficult series to get through, but so worth it, in my opinion. Obviously, there's a reason why it's one of the most famous, like, foundational fantasy series of all time. Like, there's a reason for that, and I love it to bits. But boy does it have a part of the story where you're just sat there wondering why the editors stopped saying no to him at this point of the story. So this book, is like beautiful as an object as it is the prime example of this was a slog. This was a slog. Now, Robert Jordan doesn't have a difficult writing style, so it makes it even worse that this is so hard to get through. And just as a warning, when you get to the slog, you do get out of the slog, and then it's great. It has to be said. Even the way that I read it, that like minimized the slog, I think like the most that it's possible to minimize it when you get to this book. I have vague memories of this book because I just struggled. The last example is, obviously, it's Gormenghast. This I heard a bit less about before I read than Dune, but I think I watched a few videos and I saw a few reviews online, or like it mentioned in some context. This, even more than Dune, is famous for how wordy it is. Like, I say this every time I talk about it, but it is extremely heavy on descriptions, on like ad nauseum descriptions of everything. The landscape, the castle, the rooms, the hallways, the people, everything. Literally everything will be described to you. However, that's not the only problem with this. The problem is that it's also a very vague genre. Like, to this day, you could not ask me to pinpoint what genre of fiction this is. In my head, it's fantasy because it just reads like fantasy, but it is not, because there's like no actual magic or anything fantasy like. So very dubious genre, very word heavy writing style, And it has this very strange feeling to it where you don't know if some things are satirical or not. You don't know when he's being serious or not until you get used to the style. For the first solid 100 to 200 pages of this book, I was like just trying to get my footing. You know, like you expect certain things from certain storytelling devices, from certain characters, from certain ways that things are done. And you really have to get used to how he tells his story and how subtle or not subtle he is. Because I remember several times I was like, okay, if this was a joke, it's funny, but if it wasn't, it's alarming. You know, that feeling when you're like, you're not certain if the author is being serious or not, if they're joking or not, if they really mean what they say, or if it's all like intentionally worded within a certain point of view, or if you're supposed to feel a certain way, but then the narrative steers you another way. It's a very difficult book to describe for that reason specifically. But again, like Dune, even though I was warned and I thought that I would have to like trudge through the writing style, once I was into it, and that was it. It was not difficult to read. So while I had to get used to it, once I got used to it, there was no problem at all. Like I loved it. I flew through it and I loved the descriptions. I loved everything about it. So it's difficult for me to comment on it being difficult because I don't technically agree. I just think you need to get used to it. But also, if you're not really a patient reader, like at all, then I think you would hate it. But that's maybe something that you could exercise because I'm also really not a patient person and I loved it. Let's get into the negative examples. I love talking smack. I really do. So, negative examples, books that I absolutely thought were a chore and not worth getting through. You know where I'm going with this. You know where I'm going with this. This brick house of a novel. Writing style, characterization, world building, length. Do I think it's drawn out? Like all of these things were a negative for me. And if I did not love this copy and was very happy to have found it and determined to finish it, I would not have finished this book. I never hate read, but I do very rarely set myself like a challenge. This was my Everest of last year. I wanted to finish it. I gave myself like the task to finish it because I went through so much effort trying to find this copy. And I finished it, but it genuinely felt like a hike that you did not really want to do. You know, like a hike that exhausts you and you're like, I'm never doing that again. Do I like the view? Maybe, yes, but I really hated this hike. I'm never doing this hike again. Maybe not the best comparison because you do always actually like the view if you do a hike or a long walk. I did not like the view here, but I did sort of like the ending. So I guess it's not that bad of a comparison. Like I hated the hike, but I guess the view was okay. But I really, really hated it. Like throughout, like the writing style, the things she focuses on, how long she takes to get there, the characterization. I despised everything about this. And I would say it is actually difficult because the common thing I've heard from people who don't like it is that it's mind-numbingly boring. And I agree. I could not agree more. I think that she takes so many tangents and so many chapters to get to things that I don't think would necessarily have to take that long. She focuses on so many things that aren't interesting, that are unnecessary in the grand scheme of things. Like just, I have no words. I have no words for how much I disliked this, so I would say it's a difficult book. It certainly was for me, but I think the main problem is how long it is and that people find it boring. So is it worth it? No, it is not. It is not, but I know people will tell you otherwise. So I would just say watch the series, which I know is blasphemous, but I absolutely loved the series. I love those actors, and I think they did a great job with the series, like condensing all the most boring parts into a dynamic I think 7-episode series, maybe 8 episodes. I don't know, but I love the series. It actually made me believe that I can read the book, and boy, did I regret that. The rest of the books I either haven't read, DNF'd, or tried and was unable to get through. So we're going to do this a bit more quickly because there's not much for me to talk about. Now, you know, I've been on like a King Arthur kick. I've been reading anything and everything from retellings to just mythological reshufflings to historical memoirs. Like, I've read all kinds of King Arthur stuff in the last like year, less than a year, more like 7 months. Doesn't matter. This book, which is obviously like the foundational piece of what everyone cites, aside from like Geoffrey of Monmouth, this is like the thing that you're going to hear about when you're reading anything Arthurian. I'm not going to pronounce it, but my God, it is impossible to read. Impossible to read. Like, I've only been able to read it like in excerpts, like read a short chapter here and there, or look up a specific thing that I'm referencing in some other material. Impossible to read. Not that my English like isn't on that level. I think my reading English is way better than my native language. Like way better. But oh my God, it is dry. Like, it is that specifically old way of writing that is just so unreadable. Like, I hate my time reading this. Even when I'm reading like a short chapter, I hate the way it's written and put down and I hate it. It is so unreadable. Like, it reads like an ancient play, but not in the way that Epic of Gilgamesh has been reshuffled for people to understand. It just feels unreadable to me. So I don't think I'll ever read this cover to cover. Like, I have read so much about King Arthur and people who talk about this specifically that I feel like I already know everything it says. But I might like dip into it from time to time and like to refresh my knowledge. I will never read this cover to cover. First of all, it's long, and second of all, it's insufferable to read. I do not like the style of this like at all. And I know everyone quotes it like this holy grail, pun intended. I would go for one of the retellings of this, actually. Like, Steinbeck did a retelling, John Matthews does beautiful retellings of this to make it more readable for a modern audience, and Lancelin Green also did kind of a retelling. So I'm so sorry. I can't read it. Do like a lightning round of the next few because I didn't bring physical copies, and I'm just going to give you like a quick reason for why I found them difficult. Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I hated the writing style. I despised the writing style. I know everyone says it's like one of the starter classics, you know, like super easy to read, unput downable. I hated it. It was very put downable. Like, every time I looked at the book, I felt upset about having to pick it back up. Like, I hated Rebecca, and I hated the writing style. I hated Daphne du Maurier's writing style, even like the short modern classic version. I just don't vibe with her writing style. I cannot tell you why that is. I find it so dull and so jarring to read. I really cannot tell you why that is, but I hated that writing style. Journey to the Center of the Earth. I'm sorry for like touching the mic. Journey to the Center of the Earth. Easy writing style killed me with the digressions. Like, killed me. It's a short book. Why do I need to know about this man's geology project? Okay. I almost got to the center of the earth, but that like chapter about like all the rocks and rock formations, I DNF'd it at that point. I couldn't stand it anymore. I really couldn't. This one is gonna like sting, I'm sure. Jane Austen. All of Jane Austen. I haven't tried all of Jane Austen, but I've tried a lot. I hate her writing style too. Like, I'm a Jane Austen stan. I think I've watched every adaptation in existence, and I watched them routinely and have watched them all my life. You know, like when you think of good romances, you always think of Jane Austen and the Brontes. I cannot stand her writing style. I cannot stand it. It reads, I know that's intentional, but it reads like a gossip column that has an interesting story buried underneath all the gossip and who's with who and who's going where and who's doing what, that I just don't want to read the gossip column. I do not care. I read like a short book, like I think of Jane Austen in the box sets of like little classics. I hated that too. I cannot stand her writing style. Like, I feel like everything she talks about bores me to tears, except the main romances, which are in actuality very short. Like when you watch the films and you realize how short the romances actually are, like in terms of screen time, very short. I cannot stand her writing style. Both this and Rebecca, I cannot explain to people, but I also can't. I know I can't stand it because I've tried. And again, the Jane Austen one is so weird for me because I've loved pretty much all of the stories in terms of the adaptations that I've seen. I love all of her stories. I just can't read them. I cannot put it into words. Shakespeare. Now, this one is absolutely on me. This is a language barrier because I cannot read this English. It just does not make any sense to me. I cannot read this English. Like, I can read a few lines, and unless I'm watching a play and the actor like takes pauses and enunciates and acts things out, I cannot read or understand or enjoy any Shakespeare. I read translations before. Like in high school, we read Hamlet, and I think I read like a translation of King Lear myself. I enjoyed Hamlet quite a bit, but again, I think I supplied myself with the context of an adaptation. I just know I cannot read Shakespeare. Definitely in English, and I do find it kind of dull if it's not a good translation. So without watching the adaptation, I would not be able to enjoy Shakespeare like at all. I just cannot read it. That is a level of English that I don't think I will ever be. So that is what it is. And then a few examples we have. These are all small black classics, by the way, that I DNF'd all of them. For one reason or another, we have Thomas de Quincey, DNF'd it. I couldn't stand the writing style at all. Virginia Woolf. I should have expected this because Stream of Consciousness, I will never read. Ever. I don't think I have anything else to say. I will just never read Stream of Consciousness. I hate that so much. Rousseau. Like the idea. Like I know what he was getting at. Also insufferable to read. So insufferable to read. It takes him 3 years to get to the point, even though I know what the point is going to be. Virgil. I also read this in high school. I read it in the Little Black Classics. It's just dry. It's so dry. I think maybe if there was like a modern translation, it might be interesting. I love mythology and stuff like that, but killed me. Nearly killed me. And then the last one, and this is the pettiest reason that I have. 100 Years of Solitude. The pettiest reason that I have for not wanting to read a book and something putting me off a book is I had a physical copy. Like, I think it was a translation. It wasn't in English, but it was in like my native language. Or not even my native language, but like, it doesn't matter. But I flipped through the book before reading it, and there was like this section of 5 to 10 pages, 5 to 10 pages with no paragraph breaks. And I refused to read it. I think that's the least of my problems as far as I've seen, like people talk about, like it's, the story itself is a problem, not just the way that it was written, but just seeing those like unbroken 5 to 10 pages of no paragraph breaks, of just text in like a block, I refuse to read it. I do not want to see that, okay? Do not keep the typography of the original author if you ever see that. Like, I would refuse to print a book with a single page that doesn't have a paragraph break. Like, it is just an eyesore, and I hate it, okay? Jail time for anyone who publishes a book with unbroken paragraphs. I don't care if that's how the author wrote it. Maybe, like, the space bar on their typewriter broke, or they were just really in the zone with their, like, ink pen or quill and refuse to do a paragraph break. You're going to make a paragraph break, okay? Or I will not read it. I will not read it. I despise it. It insults me. So while I don't think like 100 Years of Solitude interests me in general, because I don't like, what is it, like absurd, ridiculous, convoluted stories, like I don't care about that. But the paragraph thing just put me off it entirely. As soon as I saw that, I knew I would never read that book. Ever. And genuinely, I don't care if you think you need to keep the integrity of what the author intended. If the author intended for there to be 10 pages of one paragraph, I will not read their book. That is all I will say. That is the pettiest reason that I have for refusing to read something, and for the book being difficult. I just refuse. That is it, by the way. That is it for the video. I hope you found it at least funny. This wasn't supposed to be like an advice column video. This was just a bit of an examination of books I read or didn't read or DNF'd that I thought were difficult for one reason or another, as someone who isn't a native English speaker, but I do think my English is like at a level where it's way easier for me to read and understand than my native language. I read almost exclusively in English. I consume all content in English apart from anime. It's just interesting. It's interesting to see what people think are difficult books, because some of these I know people slog through, but I flew through. And then there are books that I feel like you had to beat me over the head for me to finish them, and other people think it's the best thing that's ever written. So it's just an interesting thing to explore. And before my phone dies, I will see you in the next video.